Alright, so this next question comes from Worst Wrestling Fan Ever. And he asks, since you like martial art based films, are you a fan of the Karate Kid franchise or their recent show, Cobra Kai, for that matter? Yeah, I do enjoy the Karate Kid movies, at least the first three, which some didn't like the two sequels, but I thoroughly enjoy them. Especially the first movie, which I think was the first family-friendly martial arts film, which I could be wrong. I've actually seen the movie so many times over the years, especially when they showed it in my karate class back in middle school. It's a pretty good movie, though I will say after watching it so many times, you start to see how much of a bully Daniel was, basically. Like, when you think about it, we wouldn't be having this entire movie if Daniel just learned to mind his own business. I mean, he was basically getting beat up by those guys from Cobra Kai because he wouldn't mind his own business. But even with that said, I still enjoy the movie as it gives me a lot of nostalgia. Like I said, I enjoy the two sequels. Karate Kid 4, the one involving that chick as the main character, I didn't like. And no, I am not sexist. I just didn't like the movie. And it was a real shame it was Mr. Miyagi's last appearance. And the 2010 remake with Jaden Smith I did not like either. I mean, honestly, for me, the only thing good about that movie was Jackie Chan. And that was basically it. But Cobra Kai I have seen, and it's not a bad show. I mean, I can at least say if it gets more kids into wanting to do more karate or martial arts, then I can't complain too much. But yeah, it's not a bad show. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, really. And if some of you want to check out the show, I recommend checking it out on YouTube Red, which I believe you have to pay for, so yeah. Alright, so this next question comes from Saved by the Bell Clips. So he asks, do you think technology gets too much hate? This from Corey Margera. Yeah, I do think it does get a lot of hate for basically no reason at all. Like, sometimes I just hate how people out there want to act like we are so high and mighty, and they think that technology is evil and keeps us apart or keeps us isolated. When I for one believe we as human beings were never really that social to begin with. Because a lot of times when you go to certain places, like let's use the workplace for example, we a lot of the times like to pretend like we enjoy having conversations with each other. Like when they say, oh, what's the weather gonna be like tomorrow? Or how was that Patriots or Red Sox game? And in my job, which I work in the IT field, most people don't talk to each other unless they need someone for something, which is great. And usually at times when I used to take the public transportation, thank God I now have a car, there were a few times where some random stranger or some bum off the streets would talk to me on the train or bus about whatever. And a lot of times I want the conversation to end. And it's not because they're bums, but it's also because I want to get back to watching whatever anime episode on my phone, and don't have any interest of having any conversations about stuff that doesn't interest me. And it's not like I don't enjoy having conversations with people because I can if that person has a lot in common with me, and enjoys talking about that particular subject that does interest me. Whether it's rock, metal, UFC, some nerdy talk, whether it's anime or gaming, certain types of movies I like, whether it's horror or martial arts, and even wrestling to some extent, even though nowadays I don't want to talk about wrestling anymore with anybody in person because of how embarrassing it's become to be a fan these days. I used to talk a lot about it in elementary school during the Monday Night Wars when wrestling was actually popular and cool. Now, not so much anymore. Because nowadays I never tell anybody that I'm a wrestling fan. And if I do, it's very briefly. Like I'll mention I used to watch it a lot as a kid. And I don't even want to make friends with other wrestling fans because a lot of them look like complete losers. Thanks to their nerdy crap for making wrestling less cool with all these vanilla midget spot monkeys. Like, unless it's a real cool person who mentions they used to watch wrestling, then I'll kind of have a conversation with them. And even my girlfriend sometimes, who used to watch wrestling herself, sometimes I'll show her old shows from my DVD collection or old shows that I downloaded from the WWE network. But I'm getting way off topic. The point is, we were never really that social to begin with. Let's be real here. A lot of us don't like or want to talk to each other because people compared to technology are not that interesting. And plus, there's tons of shitty people out there that you want nothing to do with. Technology for me is honestly a great escape from having to deal with shitty and uninteresting people. And I like how people say how times were so much better before technology, when that isn't exactly true. I personally believe that even during slavery, segregation, and even the 90s that we had to make with each other because technology wasn't so great back then. But now we have a technology, and it can do a lot of great things for us. Sure, it may have its flaws, but overall it's great. And even to those that think we don't need technology, would you rather be on a train and listen to some ghetto hood rat bitch yapping about stupid stuff? Or would you rather be on your phone with your headphones on blasting music or watch videos to drown out the shit you're hearing? So yeah, I do agree that technology gets way too much hate nowadays. And honestly, I can't wait for the day to come when technology takes over and we have little to no social interaction. And your second question, how are you like in high school? Like, what music, video games, movies do you like? I was a pretty smart guy. I can't say I was a nerd, but I was always more in the middle of someone who likes nerdy things in media, like gaming and anime, but at the same time is kind of an alpha male, like he considers himself a handsome guy, and he's been laid before. Which honestly for me is the coolest type of combination for anybody. But of course that's why I was very antisocial, because many are not like me. Because in life you either have to be too macho or too nerdy, which I don't understand. But I wasn't too antisocial because I did have some cool friends in high school, which wasn't a lot, and that's perfectly fine because I never needed that many friends to begin with. And I can't really say that I was the biggest ladies man out there, but sometimes I would date a few chicks if I was interested. And I have been to some parties that were mostly raves, because a lot that I've been to have played some really good electronic music. And that was until a dubstep killed it for me. And the other few parties that I've been to were just a bunch of teens playing some shitty rap and reggaeton music. Like, I swear to God, people kept playing that shitty Daddy Yankee song over and over and over again. Like, gosh. And it's not just that, but these people just keep playing the same songs over and over and over again. Like the same shitty rap songs you would hear from, like, Lil Wayne or whatever. Like, seriously, do people ever get sick and tired of listening to the same shit? Like, gosh, people are so one-dimensional. But let's see. For sports, I was never into basketball or football. Like, I for one was always more into combat sports like martial arts and extreme sports like dirt biking, and even snowboarding with a few friends. Especially dirt biking, which I thought was a lot of fun. Just to make sure, in case some of you are interested in learning how to do it, if you plan on going alone, just make sure you have first aid things and a fully charged phone with service. I wouldn't recommend going on a big bike alone, but a short trail ride at home isn't too dangerous in my opinion, because I have fallen and had my bike land on me, and luckily I got it off myself. But yeah, and you asked me what music, video games, and movies I like. The same as I'm into right now. Like, if you've been paying attention to my Q&As, you would know that the music that I listen to is rock and metal, industrial, jazz, and techno music. Like, most kids back then were into stuff that I didn't care for, like rap music, and all this teeny bopper crap like Jesse McCartney and all that shit. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't have many friends back then, because people were into stuff that I didn't care for. But I did play in a band in high school, and we would at times rehearse for a few performances, whether it was school performances, parties, and even family festivals. For video games, I was heavily into hack and slash games like Devil May Cry, God of War, fighting games like Mortal Kombat, the Dragon Ball Z Budokai series, the Guilty Gear series, and Soul Calibur, horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, first-person shooter games like Doom, Quake, and Halo, and wrestling games like the SmackDown series and GameCube series, and even the early SmackDown vs. Raw games from the first game to 2007. But after SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, I just started to lose interest in buying wrestling games. And for movies, I was always more into horror, action, sci-fi, and martial art movies, which I would often see with a few friends and the chicks I dated. Although I will say that I was kind of dragged into seeing the first Twilight movie back in 2008 with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and that was during my senior year in high school, and I was just incredibly bored watching that movie. Like, seriously. It should honestly be a crime for women to drag men into seeing these stupid romancy chick flicks. Ugh. I can't say that my teenage years were the worst, but they weren't the best either. I've just always felt like my life before high school was way better, 'cause high school life is so overrated. Or maybe it's because everything after 2005 went downhill for me. And yeah, everything did go downhill after 2005, from entertainment and society. Sometimes I wish I could have had my teenage years during the 90s, but it is what it is, dude, so there you go. Alright, so this next question comes from Kamki, and he or she asked, why are movies nowadays so unmemorable? Because they have nothing. Simple as that. I mean, really, when you watch these movies in theaters, they're just in one ear and out the other. These movies really have no longevity in terms of home video, repeat viewings, and no one cares. People don't care about movies. To be honest, they don't. They just go to the movies and it's one big social gathering, and they just don't fucking care. Which is why I don't go to the theaters not too often anymore. Although I will say the new Joker movie looks pretty interesting, and I'm gonna try and check it out real soon. But that's it. Until Hollywood gets their heads out of their asses and learns to be more original and more passionate about filmmaking again, we are just gonna get more mediocre movies year after year. And that is why I am so sick and tired of all these remakes, not funny Kevin Hart movies, and all these comic book movies. Sorry to all the nerds out there, but that's how I feel. I mean, there have been certain movies in this decade that have rewatchability for me, like Blade Runner 2049, Hangover 3, Dread, The Raid Redemption, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Resident Evil Damnation and Vendetta, Clown, Green Inferno, Strangers, Us, Get Out, and a few of DC's animated movies released on Blu-ray like Batman Under the Red Hood and The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2. But those are just a few. But hey, at least I had some movies to enjoy, so there you go. Alright, his or her second question. What's your favorite year of the 90s? That's a tough one. Let's see. I did like 94. 93 was pretty good. You know what? I'd probably have to say 1998. And that was the year that I had moved to Boston, and out of that shithole known as New York. There were movies that I enjoyed that year like Blade, Halloween H2O, Saving Private Ryan, Scooby-Doo on a Zombie Island, American X, Pokemon the first movie, you know, the one involving Mewtwo. And you even had some TV shows that came out that year, like that 70s show, Celebrity Deathmatch. And I still remember when they had a Stone Cold Steve Austin on that debut episode. And that was when WWF was hot. You had a Power Rangers in space, which was a great season, and sort of brought me back to the series of Power Rangers for a while. Although I will say I did stop watching pretty much after the Pokemon and Digimon days. And I remember Season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer being pretty good that year, Wrestling was at its best that year from WWF, WCW, and ECW putting on a kick-ass product. Gaming was good that year, although I do prefer 1994, especially for movies. Rob Zombie had released his Hellbilly Deluxe that year, which was a fucking masterpiece. And let's see, you had that one movie called Urban Legends, which I did enjoy. You had that one movie called Batman Sub-Zero. And yeah, I thought 1998 was a great year. The late 90s was just a cool time to be alive. And that's pretty much it, really. But other years of the 90s that I did enjoy were 1994, 95, 93, 96, 97, and even 1999. So I pretty much like a lot of years are from the 90s, but 94 is a close one for me. And that's pretty much it. So yeah. And your final question. How would you make rock and metal mainstream again? How would I make it popular again? Simple. I would put them in movie trailers, movie soundtracks, popular video game soundtracks, and even TV shows and cartoons and animes. I'd also bring back Headbangers Ball on MTV, and that's where I'd be promoting different types of rock and metal music out there, whether it's on YouTube or MTV. And these new songs would have to develop into something that sounds stylistically new and rebellious. Just so that way kids will think rock and metal is cool again. You know, like bands like Seven Dust, Lamb of God, and Catatonia will get more airtime on the radio. I would also make sure that people ignore a lot of these metal elitists out there who want to bash any new style of metal because they don't want to get with the fucking times. And that's basically how I do it. Now, my only fear about metal becoming mainstream is that it's gonna attract a bunch of critics and stupid people out there who want to complain about it supposedly being satanic, or about it being a bunch of angry white people screaming on the mic. And that would most likely be the case, but as long as those people are in the niche and are completely being ignored, and it still creates a whole new generation of rock and metal heads, well, I don't want to say metalheads, but a whole new generation of rock and metal listeners. That's all that's going to matter to me. And I'm gonna make sure that we promote different bands of different ethnic backgrounds, whether black, Hispanic, Indian, Asian, or Brazilian, whatever. Like, I want to make sure that rock and metal is more diverse. And I know a lot of people are sick of the forced diversity crap you see in the entertainment industry. And I completely understand that, but it's not going to be like forced diversity. When it comes down to it, the quality of your music comes first, no matter what skin color you are. And I'd also promote more hot chicks or more attractive rock and metal artists out there, especially hot chicks in music videos. Cause let's be honest, sex sells. I mean, you look at a band like Arch Enemy, and they have a pretty hot lead singer in Alyssa White-Glutz. You know, bands like that are gonna be promoted more. And it's still gonna be brutal as ever before with meaningful lyrics. And I'd also promote different types of t-shirts and merchandise in commercials for new bands out there. And that's basically it. So thank you for your questions.